All right, we'll start the meeting. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming to the ASB meeting. We'll start out with the agenda, and are there any additions or deletions of the agenda that anybody would like to see there? No.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the agenda as presented.
All right. Everybody in favor? That's carried. We'll move on to the minutes of the board meeting on the 26th of October. Are there any errors or omissions that anybody's seen there? Okay, well, I seen one. I wasn't there, and my name is on here, so. Just take that one off. Right, somebody move that? Good, John? Everybody in favor? That's carried. All right, then we have delegations coming at 10 o'clock, so we'll skip over that, and then we'll go to Gary for the level of service.
All right, each year we present the level of service at the first ASB meeting. We'll go through the changes on the document, and then after we review that very briefly, we'll go through some of the highlights and some of the work that was actually done. So we'll skip down to the form. First page here, I'd like to stop just here for a minute, and we have our vision, our mission, and our values. One important value we have is our staff. As we go forward through the work of the level of service, without the staff, it just doesn't get done. And we've been very fortunate to have all of our staff return for this year, so it makes things a lot easier, and we rely on them and all the work that they do. So we'll get into the document now. So down to the resource management, we're just going to focus on the changes of this document for now. One of the, how do we do that?
You can get one of these if you need it. You get one of these if you.
A little bit better?
The glasses won't help. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Turn around too.
All right, in the resource management portion here and the rural extension programs, we've added collaborate with various stakeholders and support applied research projects that support sustainable agriculture. We're going to talk about this a little later on, so hold your thoughts on that one, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail. Also, we're going to work with Dragline manure applicators to identify and install culvert road crossings that are mutually beneficial to producers and the county. We're also going to talk about that a little bit later, but right now we're taking applications on producers if they've had a good spot where that would be beneficial. So any producers out there can certainly get those applications in. As we skip down, that's just the new bylaw for this year. We'll talk about that a little bit later on when we go through some of our highlights as well and on some changes we've made there. Moving down, hamlets and subdivisions. We do the mowing in hamlets and subdivisions, so we've added in here water and wastewater lagoons will be mowed and cleared of woody plants once per year or more, depending on regrowth. We've always done that. We just haven't had it in this document, so we've added that. Last year, we were mostly only had to do them one time. But down to the brushing, we did add also that we're going to brush on those sites as well. And last year, we cleared all the brush and treated it where we could so that there's no regrowth. And did the vegetation a little bit better along the banks, including a spray application to get rid of the grass and all the weeds that are growing on the edge. So. Very large document, as you can see. The next change we have here is in playgrounds and trail inspections. Playgrounds will be inspected by staff certified in playground inspection every 2 months at minimum. We had that in there before, it just wasn't written very well, so we rephrased it. And we do that for insurance purposes. We go in and we inspect those playgrounds once a month, but we want to meet our criteria of every 2 months in case we get, beyond 1 month, so we're still covered by insurance. And we go through those very thoroughly. In the last few years, we've added a lot of new equipment and taken out some of the stuff that could be a liability. So that's helped a lot in our inspections and the safety of them.
Okay, just a minute, Gary. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In that regard, is the insurance requirement every 2 months? Or what is the insurance requirement?
The insurance requirement is whatever you set it at. So if you set it to 1 month, you'd have to be 1 month or less. So we put it at 2, so we meet the requirement. A few years ago, we had the insurance folks come in and they give us a detailed summary of what we needed to do. And we were pleased that some of the equipment did come out that was was getting pretty old and rusty and stuff like that. It made it easier just to replace it. So on our playgrounds, we are looking really good on the quality right now. So, and we'll continue to improve those as well. So, yep. Moving down, we'll focus on this document a little bit. This is our roadside mowing map. The yellow parts on the bottom and the top is what we intend to. We mow those once if it doesn't need it. Last year, although it was dry, we still did a fair amount of mowing. Kochia was coming up on the edge of the road, and we just can't let the kochia go to seed. So before it does, we'll do a little more mowing where we have to. And in our highlights, we'll get to that in a little more detail as well. And this is our roadside spraying map. So every year we spray 1/3 of the county. We blanket spray. We try to. It's impossible to blanket spray. There's a lot of crops out there that we can damage. Our area this year is Area 1, west of Barrens. We do spend a lot of time and effort controlling weeds in that area. So we're happy it's our area to blanket spray this year. It's a little more difficult when you get into Area 2, chin area where the potato plants are growing. We can say we're going to blanket spray. We didn't spray in there at all just because of the potato crops and other crops that we did not want to damage. So, with that said, we'll get into some of the highlights of our level of service. So this is the last year of our 2024 grant cycle. In 2025, usually in the first 3 months, we'll have to have our application done. So we're hoping that the application comes out before our fall meeting so we can do a little bit of strat planning. We may bring in someone from the government to help us out, or we'll just go through that document and you guys will have your chance on the level of service. That's when we really go through that document and figure things out. So hopefully if we're able to do it in October, we'll do it then. I'm hoping we don't have to make an extra meeting. So, Weed Control Act, we do spraying on provincial highways, and they've raised the amount of money they give us to do that from $28,000 to $38,000, and that's helped a lot. I mean, as everyone knows, the cost of everything has gone up, so that helps. And also, we do bed and shore. So the bed and shore is basically the high water mark, the big rocks on the rivers. We don't spray on there, but they give us some money to control. What we do is we do biocontrol agents or we do hand picking. We just don't think that it's the best place to put chemical down. You can spray a certain percentage, but it's just not the best option, and I don't think people want to see it that close to the water. Roadside spraying, we did 1,256 miles, so that's about what we have been doing, a little more than the third. Those miles are not totally accurate because you can't say how many miles you did and how much you shut off. It's very difficult to factor that in, so it's about what we did. And then weed patches. We're spending a lot of money, so we have some individuals that go around with half tons and we spot spray the weeds that are hard to kill. So last year we focused on leafy spurge and milkweed. We did a lot of milkweed control in and around the jail area, and then the majority, other than that, has been leafy spurge. There's a couple hundred leafy spurge spots that we sprayed last year, so I don't notice them when we're driving around inspecting anymore. We have the map from previous years, so we'll go back and we'll check to see did we get control. And then we have weed inspectors, and these guys are finding these new areas and spraying them. So we're doing pretty good there. It's just the chemicals that it takes to kill some of these hard to control weeds is harsh. So you can leach into fields. We have to be super careful. It's good to have a back slope on your road so that you have like a little bit of something to stop it if the rain comes and moves it. So weed control regulation, which sets out which weeds are noxious or prohibited noxious, that's being reviewed, and we're going to go through that after the meeting. There's a survey that we're going to take, but Derek's been part of that. And in our county, one thing to note is that we have some weeds that are elevated. So scentless chamomile, that's prohibited noxious. That means you must control it. That's one we're doing pretty good with over the years. That's one that you bring in grain from northern Alberta where that weed is a little more prevalent. On a wet year, it likes it. You'll see it on the edge of the road, but we don't notice it nearly as much. You also notice around feed mills and in the feedlots and stuff like that, but everybody's got very good at controlling it. The other two weeds that we have upgraded are kochia and cowcockle.
Do you inspect yards too?
Pardon? What?
Do you guys go on to the yards, so like where the feedlots are and stuff like that, to look if they have the weeds there?
We haven't for a while. The weed inspectors driving by or myself, we'll make contact if we see something, but their yards are very clean right now. Like they're controlling the weeds and they're getting custom sprayers or doing it themselves. But yeah, we do weed inspections on private land as well. Mostly we go to known areas. Over the years, you just have a history of where all the weeds are. But yeah, we're always, any given year we'll find a few new spots, that's for sure. And we're doing a proactive, we'll go out there and give them some PR material on what weeds they might find. But we've done that so many times that most know what's going on. So, and it's important to note that the kochia and the cowcockle we probably don't need to upgrade if they redo the Weed Control Act. Kochia, that is the weed that we chase the most, that and Canada thistle. And if it wasn't on the list, it sure would make our jobs easier, but the world wouldn't be a better place, I don't think, with all the kochia that'd be growing, right? I mean, everybody could see the tumbleweeds that were blowing around yesterday, and that weed is...
Cleared up like fence lines in my neighborhood.
Yeah, it's gotten so windy that those weeds that are up against are just shredding. And I mean, we'll be chasing that weed for many more years with what's been happening.
You're not going into Saskatchewan, are you?
No, no.
We're just sending them that way.
And as all farmers know, I mean, they have to be patient with the county because if in their own fields as well, kochia is becoming resistant to everything. So very, very difficult to kill. On top of the road, we're doing very well. We've got some pre-emergent chemical that keeps it from coming through. It's when you get close to fields or the different types of chemicals that are contact herbicides are a little more difficult. And the real good chemicals that have residual, we don't want to push that right up against someone's field. So and the farmer knows just as well as we do, because when I see kochia, you look around. Everybody had it because in a drought, kochia does very, very well. Moving on to pest control, grasshopper numbers are increasing. Dry, grasshoppers like that. So we're told that if you had grasshoppers last year, those hot spots, they're going to be hot spots again for this year. So especially if you weren't able to do any control measures. Rabies program, we used to hire a trapper that trapped for skunks, and then they would send the heads off to the ADRI. The province supported that program by checking for rabies, but that program's been discontinued because they're no longer going to check the heads, so we don't hire a trapper anymore. Dutch elm survey, this is one we've got into the last few years. It's on the Pest Act, so we have an obligation to check for it. We haven't found any yet. There was a couple trees that were in the city of Lethbridge that had it, so we feel that if there's going to be a Dutch elm outbreak, it may be close to the landfills. So this year we're going to check around the landfills of Lethbridge. The guy's going to come in and check all the elm trees. There's quite a few, so we get a good idea. Last year, We were out in the Churn and Iron Springs area, same thing. The county's got their landfill out there, and that's where everybody takes their trees. So moving on, we do survey for club root, of course, and Lethbridge County is currently club root free. Every year we do 6-10 fields. And we're going to promote how producers can help themselves by checking as well. It's a pretty simple process of pulling roots, and mostly happen on your field entrances. So soil erosion, I was hoping not to key on this too much, but after yesterday, you can see it's still an issue. We're producing a video and the video that we're going to have is going to be on solutions for producers. We're not pointing fingers because everybody has land moving, just the drought conditions. I did a presentation at the ASB conference with myself and Todd Green from the County of Newell. A lot of other municipalities don't know what we're dealing with in southern Alberta, so we did that. Nobody wants to do show that and do that, but we felt that soil erosion is an issue in the south, and it has been for the last 3 years for sure. And we are working with producers as well on some solutions. There's been some ditches that were filled in here last fall. We helped, we went out with our machine and showed them what could be done, worked with them on instructing what really needed to be done, and then we're working with them on clearing those ditches out, whether it be right away or down the road. Ditches filled in last fall, and I just told the guy, stop your land from blowing, but don't clean that ditch yet, because you could be clean it out 3 times by spring, right? So, and even now it's into the same things, so it may be fall on 1 or 2 of those. Moving on, avian flu. We've had several commercial flocks in the county that have been affected by avian flu. 4 total instances over the last couple of years. They give us a phone call when that's an issue. Even when it happens in a neighboring MD, but the exclusion zone pops into the county. They don't tell you exactly where it is, but the CFIA, if you go to their website, they have some very good information that is available to the public, and it's good for Ag Service Board members to take a look there. So, mowing, approximately 4,600 miles of roadside was mowed last year. And how did the mowing go, Derek?
Went good, really good.
So normally that's 5,200 miles we do there. We're down 600 miles because we didn't have to do west of Barrens. Like by the time we got there again for the second round, there just wasn't anything. We have a disc mower that it's very efficient, and in October we'll wheel around with that and just cut the koch off that's growing on, or a little bit of grass, so the snow doesn't get hung up. The mowing goes very well. We, like I say, some of the areas in the yellow zone where we intend to mow once, they do get mowed twice. We get the odd phone call for animals. So an individual called me last year in that zone, and she says that deer are popping out and we can't see them. Well, an antelope. So I went down there to check it out, and I thought, well, I don't really want to do this, but deer jumped in front of me, so she was right. We mowed it. So we kind of made that part of our route where that is a concern. And there are a few spots in the county, no doubt. So
There are a few spots that are, like where we can't get in there and spray that well, so like we went over them 3 times last year mowing just to keep the kosher down, because we can't spray by the potatoes and stuff like that, so.
yeah, in that chin area, like I mentioned, we actually, instead of spraying, although it was in the 1/3 we were to spray, we just decided that we were going to mow. So we went in, and that was the first spot we mowed in June, so mid-June. And it worked out great, because then the grader operator was able to keep up on the edges where the kochia grows. Worked very, very well. So we intend to hit that area early again this year. Usually we're hitting pavement the first week of June. We move on to gravel roads in mid-June. If we have qualified staff where we don't have to train too much, we'll start a little later because we know they can keep up. It takes a while to train a mower operator. We can keep ahead that way, and our equipment is very good. We're just on a new cycle of mowers and tractors, and everything is, we're doing very well with that. Any questions on the mowing? One thing that, you know, if you want to give some input on the level of service is that yellow area, or do it all twice, or add some input there. Mowing it's costly to do, but it is necessary, and especially lately for weed control. We can't spray everywhere, like we said, along a canola field, a seed canola, potatoes, peas, all this we can't. So we time our mowing and spraying to be at different times. So if we're spraying an area, we'll spray it, and then 3 weeks later, we'll mow at least when the weeds are coming back up, so that it always looks good is what we're trying for. It doesn't always work out perfectly, that's for sure, but that's what we're trying to do mainly, is to control the weeds. Moving on to brushing. So last fall was a very dry fall. We were able to keep a couple individuals on, and we did a lot of brushing, and because there was no snow, we were able to treat all those trees that we cut. This spring's been a little bit different story. Early on, when we intended to do it, there was snow on the ground, so we've waited, and now crews are out there now. We're cleaning up some trees as we speak today. And our intention is to do a little bit better job of treating. So we mark all the spots that we cut trees from, and then we'll go back the next year when they start to sucker back up. That's when we'll treat them with a chemical. And the chemical's working pretty good. It doesn't go into the tree. It'll just treat the sucker. So if you're along someone's farmstead, you know, there's less of a risk there. Equipment rentals. Surprising, the Brilliant drill went out 24 times last year, and Derek handles most of those, and we increased the price from the 150 minimum to 220. We got a little feedback. Folks didn't like the price going up that much, but we had to keep up with inflation. That's still a very reasonable rate for seeding. I mean, if you go to some of the private places, it's at least a third more. So we're trying to creep up to what's reasonable. And folks are using that mainly for like lawns or acreage areas
Yeah,
or
lots
else.
of acreage areas and stuff like that.
John, just a minute. John?
Yeah, just a question on that. So the number of times that it got rented out, how does that compare with the year before in relationship to the increase in price?
It slowed down a little bit last year, but I think a lot of it was too dry. Like, a lot of guys were phoning about it, but they never did want to seed it because they couldn't put water on it or anything like that. So I think that was the biggest slowdown on it. But they were, I don't know, yeah, they've been busy. Like this spring, we haven't had a phone call on them yet. So like usually they're going pretty heavy by now. So I think just because everything being so dry, what slowed them down last year. But I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, that revenue is about a little higher than what we've had in the past, but of course there was an increase. So we're about the same every year. It's surprising that as many people did seed grass last year. We're the same. Like right now, our seeding program for last fall's roads that were constructed, we're doing that. We're just starting today. This could have been done a while back, but it's just so dry. So we're trying to time it to the rain, but as farmers know, that doesn't always work. I mean, you got to get out there and do it sooner or later. And with that seeding, we did 10 miles of seed last year. We balanced that between spring and fall. And I went out and checked the stuff we did last fall. The grass is coming up. Looks good. So are the weeds. It's all green, but not all grass. So more weeds, because you can certainly see them, but mostly just snakeweed and stuff that's easy to kill. Parks, new playground and court we constructed in Shaughnessy last year. We had the grand opening, I guess that would be in early September. This year we don't have a big project. We're going to spend some time and effort putting in benches and upgrading some of the old swings that are 50 years old, redoing the gravel, like the pea gravel that's under them for the safety concern. That it's a big cost. We're not going to see the same impact of Shaughnessy where you got these awesome big playgrounds. It's going to be smaller stuff, but it's all going to add up. And then in the fall, or if we have time this spring, we're going to start doing some pathways. The old pathways that have been there a while are really starting to need some resurfacing. Some of them are shale, like in Mountain Meadows. There's a couple miles there. And we've been tinkering away where we could get shale and put it on. Shale's gone. You can't get shale. You can get it from Montana or Saskatchewan. It's just too costly to ship it, so we're going to go with the limestone. So Next year, we intend to do Mountain Meadows. This year, we're gonna practice on Broxburn. It's a lot less, trail there, so we'll get that done this by the fall, hopefully. And then some of the other things we have is the Nickel family. They were our BMO Farm family from last year. This year, the Brian Buckman family will be the BMO Farm nominee, and they've been accepted. So I know that was on the last council meeting of who was going to attend for
Yeah,
that.
we did have that on our council meeting, and Morris is gonna be going there because I guess he knows the people are really good, so. Yeah.
Yep. So this covers our core activities.
John?
Sorry, just had a thought and a question on the Farm Family of the Year. And maybe it's just kind of a good time to mention it. I was giving some thought on that, and I was wondering about, rather than sending a counselor every year, send the nominee, because we're doing a public nomination situation now. So, not something we need to make a decision on, but just kind of throwing it out there for thought and discussion for when we get to that point, because it might be an incentive to get people nominating more people, right? Because if you nominate somebody and they're successful, then you attend with them.
Is this something you want to bring as a recommendation to council, or?
Well, I guess what's everybody's thoughts on it?
Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understood that this is part of our public service, or the availability is because as a municipality, we're sending someone. So I think it's still good to have a counselor attend together with them.
Okay.
Yeah, those nominations will go out later on in the summer, like we did last year. They're asking, usually I think it's the fall. So we'll put those out again, and that'll come in front of you folks.
How many
in the
nominees
fall.
did you have?
There's quite a few. I think there was 11 or 12. A bunch of them, there were numerous times the same family. So as well, what else was there? Well, some of them that you couldn't apply. You have to be living on the farm. There are some folks that were nominated that live in town. It doesn't apply. You have to be actually living on site. So we excluded, I think, one of those. So that's our core services that we do, and that's where we get the provincial grant, the main provincial grant. So does anybody have any questions on the grant qualifying activities?
Ken?
Thank you. Just a little curious about avian flu, and I know we don't have a lot of involvement in that, but I'm not sure CFIA's sort of inspection front. I think I'm not overly knowledgeable on it. I'm just wondering, as it's been becoming more and more of an issue, and now we've got the information of crossing the cattle, and not as a severe strain. But I'm just wondering if we're doing enough along that front, whether we need to have either potential inspections or just general communications improvement on that disease.
Yeah, as things heat up here, especially the United States, I think it's important that the information, we put some information out there. I think Matt's going to have something in the newsletter, and we've had a few things. We don't want to set out panic either. So the information that I think we should be putting out it's got to come from the Canadian government, right, and off that CFIA site. But certainly, you shouldn't be letting anybody into your farm too much and walking around. That's one thing that can be done. And when it does become an issue, it's very stressful for the folks that have it enter their farm. It's not fun. They show up and they take care of it. They phone me. The province gives us a call and lets us know that it's in your county. They don't tell you where it is. We've found all the areas because you can go onto that CFI site and there's an exclusion zone for moving product. So you can tell in the basic area it is. All the neighbors do know. And that's when they start really not letting people on their farm, right? But yeah, I think we don't have we don't do anything with that except they let us know. And then if we're asked to do anything, I've been asked for pressure washers. They'll come in after and clean everything up and disinfect, or where can we find some and that sort of thing. But that's about it.
Okay, Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the challenges we have with avian flu is not only the agricultural side of it, but from a public health standpoint, just because of the anxiety that it raises. So we did some communications last year because we had some inquiries, and just like Gary said, we've redirected to the federal government, but in turn too, to some of the provincial health messaging on the human side, because people get very apprehensive when they hear bird flu, avian flu, or anything of the sort. So as much as it's the ag focus, we have the public health side of it too. So our messaging has been pretty minimal and strictly to redirect. And so it's a tough one for that reason for us to take on. Even if we're targeting one side of it, it creates other communication challenges.
And I think too that the chicken farmers and broiler farmers that we have in our area and through the province too, that you know, as soon as they get their education from their organizations, and I think that's really important that they do see the seriousness of it, because I mean they are really affected by the whole thing, and I think that you know, as soon as you usually get contacted by the province then.
That's right. The producers, of course, I would believe it's self-inspection, so when they're going out, they're gonna be the first one that notices, so I would imagine they're reporting themselves. And it's important to do that because we don't want it to turn into a situation where it gets into any other animals or the potential for humans, right?
And I think all of them are probably insured quite well for diseases like that.
Yep, it is covered through their programs for insurance. They didn't get to hurt too bad. It's just a lot of work, and they show up on your farm in white suits. I can't imagine that as a pleasant process.
Dan?
Thank you. What is the process for like backyard flocks? Because understanding like commercial operations are heavily monitored by farmers and veterinarians, but backyard flocks, what education and stuff are we? Because that, from my perspective, from the business side, we did an analysis of like where our risk is when we enter yards, and yeah.
That is where it's more difficult for sure, because we are trying to educate those folks as well. The folks that have 1 million chicken, they don't like to see these small backyard flocks because there's potential, right, to upset a whole industry. But I mean, it's rural life, and a lot of people do have them. So just continue to educate them, and if they're seeing some deads, they need to report as well. So
I certainly didn't want to belabor it, Mr. Chairman. I just know that it's a pretty big issue, and you mentioned, you know, you're not doing rabies testing anymore, and I'm just wondering about like wildlife too, because I keep hearing cross information, like geese don't transfer it as much as ducks. And are you aware of any sort of wildlife monitoring that goes on?
yeah, so folks will call us and they'll have a concern about whatever type of bird. In the spring of last year, they wanted to know if there was secondary birds. Like the first, it was they want birds of prey. They wanted to know those ones they were testing, but it got into the point where geese, they didn't even want to test them anymore. It is in the wild flocks all over southern Alberta and Alberta. You're finding avian flu in the wild birds for sure. And that's the concern for when the birds start migrating in the spring. That's where the concern is, that they're bringing it in. And then they say it should taper off in the fall when the birds migrate back. It doesn't always happen that way, so it lingers around.
And especially with all the lakes that we have too, and stuff like that. I mean, it's just tremendous, like the amount of birds that are there. It's just crazy. And you know, if you want something to spread, that's probably where it comes from.
Yeah, and with the fall and the change of migration timing, I would think it's you know, last fall it was very nice into the fall. So imagine that they're still around for quite a bit longer. So that doesn't help. So, but that does conclude the level of service for the grant activities. I'm going to ask Matthew Wells to come up now, and we'll go over the resource management portion.
Morning, Matthew.
Morning, everybody. I won't take up too much of your time. I've broken it down into 3 different sections here today. So the first one we're going to talk about is EFP and EFP Plus and funding. The EFP this year, we've had 18 people sign up already, and eight of those I've already approved. A lot of them are just dairy farmers or feedlot or owners. I've gotten a couple that are sugar beet growers. So, as you might be aware, the ASB, the Alberta Sugar Beet Grower Association, they're requiring their producers to have an EFP Plus program now. So now they have to complete those. So I've had 2 already completed, and I know a bunch of them got completed last year. So, but we'll be on top of that. The EFB Operations Committee, we did have a meeting here a month ago, and it's just reviewing the EFP and or deciding, how to improve the work, but whatnot. And then the SCAP program, we're continuing to promote the SCAP program to producers through the newsletter and other social media platforms too.
So with the environmental farm plan, the Lethbridge County is one of the leaders in the amount of farm plans that get pushed through. And Matt's often called every week. I'm sure there's folks phoning in that need a little bit of help. And then that's related to some of the funding. That's why folks some are required to do it, like the dairy producers, but also they're filling it out because it's a requirement of some of the funding streams.
So Matthew, you help along with the EFB and stuff too,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
necessary? Okay.
Yeah, so most of the time, like other municipalities, they'll do a workshop or something. Usually with me, I just do it right in person. So I'll go to their farmstead and we'll just do it right there and get it done within an hour or 2 hours, depending on how big the operation is. I find it a lot easier that way. It's a lot more personable. Whereas if you do it in the workshop, some things can get missed, and so I find it easier that way. So, yeah.
Okay.
Matt, would you mind just briefly explaining what the EFP Plus program is? I'm unaware of that one.
Oh yeah, so it's just an upgraded version of the workbook. It's essentially one extra chapter. It provides, I got it written down here, provides producers with an official equivalency score with SAI Platform's Farm Sustainability Assessment Global Standard. And then, yeah, so that's essentially what it is. There's only few groups or operations that need to do it right now. One of them is the sugar beet growers. We'll see what happens, and there might be more coming down the road. So, yep. Any other questions on that one? All good. Okay. Outreach. So, as you're aware, we do newsletters, videos, social media, conferences, workshops, webinars, presentations, and a field day. So with the newsletter, it comes out 3 times a year. With that, we've expanded quite a bit. It used to just be manure and nutrient management, but now we've expanded to a lot of different areas. And that's to entice more readers, and we've gotten more participation, I guess you could say. So one of the examples is like with the crossword, we've had more people completing it, and which is great news. Videos, we've been dabbling into this more and more each year. So like Gary's mentioned, we're doing the soil erosion video. It might be one video, it might be several, just based on how much information there is. With that, we had 6 producers that helped complete that video with us. So that's going to be some really good information for everybody. We also have 3 shelter belt videos coming up this year. So those are going to be establishing a shelter belt, properly planting a tree, and winter maintenance. We are also doing 2 video tours of operations here in the county. So one of them is 845 Spuds and Full Circle Plastics. This is just to inform people that watch the video different types of operations and what kind of goes on in the county. It would be the same one as we did with Rod Lanier a couple years ago on Hemp Hub. And then we're also doing a promotion of raptor poles. So we partnered this year with Forest Alberta and Alberta Conservation Association to put up 2 raptor poles on county land. Went really well. And actually one of them has a bird on it already, surprisingly. That was quick. And the last video that we're going to be looking at is a club root scouting video with Mike Harding. It's just going to be information on how producers can look for or scout club root in their own fields. So,
Just with the raptor poles, the raptors can take out 500 gophers per year, is that it?
460, yeah.
Okay, I was off by a few there. I mean, I still get a lot of calls on strychnine alternatives. So we're promoting natural ways of doing this, and also we were at the training that we have in December, and there was a fella from Saskatchewan that did tested all the chemicals that you can use to take care of gophers and which ones are best. So we're steering producers on where to go for those and which ones work best. Some work just as good as strychnine without the secondary kill. So, and you can buy them at the local ag dealers. So we're trying to promote what works and what also is the most cost efficient. And the last newsletter that we put out, we had that material in there, so folks can read that. And then when Matt's newsletter goes out, my phone rings and gets the questions asked about certain things. So it's great. Weeds, pests, they're all phoning, so it just shows you that people are reading that newsletter, and it is very well received. And that is the most positive comments we get back is through our newsletter. So Matt does a good job on that. So.
I should know. Oh, sorry, Klaus.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I should note the newsletter is also being sent out east in Ontario. One of the Dan Leroy from the university, he's been sending it out, and apparently people love it over there too. So.
Okay, well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So with the we've had it on the Agriculture Service Board. We had a resolution on the strychnine. We probably haven't heard anything back from that because it probably goes to the province and then from there to.
The resolutions do come through most every year to bring back
Yeah.
strychnine. The part about strychnine, they didn't like the secondary kills when they did the study, and there's a long document on the review. It would take some time to get back, even if they decided tomorrow. They'd have to do likely a bunch more studies. I do not see it coming back for a long time. So I think producers would be wise to move on to the solutions and what they can do.
Okay, thanks.
Continuing, social media. So last year we did the What's That Weed, What's That Insect. It did really well, and we're going to continue that to provide that information to producers this year. Conferences. So we had a booth at the Farming Smarter Conference and Trade Show, the Ag Expo, and the ASB Conference. We myself, and Maddie Watson, our communications expert, also attended the local producers gala hosted at Lethbridge College. And then this Thursday, we are attending the City of Lethbridge Community Conversation booth, and that'll be a great opportunity to talk with city folk there. That's from 3 to 7, and that's at the NMAX. So, upcoming workshops. So actually tomorrow we have a upcoming shelter belt workshop. It was supposed to be last Tuesday, but due to weather we had to postpone it. We have about 40 producers that are signed up right now and are looking to attend, so that's really good. That's a little bit more than last year. And our presentations will consist of our 2 arborists, so Lindsay Bell and Grant Collins, and then also our favorite fire chief here, Heath Wright, and Southern Irrigation. And they're going to be talking about drip lands for trees. So, the nutrient management webinar series. So we hosted that again this year. It was from January to February for 3 days. 3 weeks, 3 days, each Monday. We had 5 presenters, over 100 for the first 2 days and 60 viewers for the last day. We posted those videos, recordings on YouTube, and they've been doing extremely well there too. Presentations. So just last month, I did a presentation for Red Crow College on sustainable agriculture, EFP, and new technology. It was well received, and they're hoping that'll come back out again next year. Upcoming presentations, we have R.I. Baker Middle School, a grade 6 class. They're looking to have us come out again this year and do a presentation for them. We did one last year, and they seemed to go really well, so they want to do the same this year. And then with the tours, so Ag Tour, that will be discussed during the field day discussion, which will be later in today's meeting. So last topic here, so the other portion, I guess. So each year, I always do the Alberta Agroforestry Crop Reporting and Agri-Climate Impact Report. That's usually done once a month. And then tree maintenance. So we've been promoting some of the trees we've been planting in the parks, and we've been using this new mulch, not new mulch, but there was donated mulch from Rod Lanier from Hemp Hub. So we've been trying that out to see it does really well in retaining water, especially during a drought, as we're everybody's aware. So we'll see how that goes. And the last one is the Clean Farm Silage Pickup program. As you guys may be aware, it has come to an end, and we're just waiting on word to see where this program goes. So that's it.
Okay,
All
I
right.
think that is one, Bill, I think that's one we're gonna be tackling tomorrow, right? We're gonna get some more information on that, on the plastics pickup and stuff like that. Yeah.
So that is both the level of service for the grant activity and the resource management. The new grant agreement will come out, like I said, and I anticipate the core activity, the spraying, the weeds, the pests, the soils, that'll be very, very similar. They increased our grant back to what it was a few years ago, 160 some thousand for that one, and we get 91,000 for the resource management. When we fill out this grant or we do the strat planning, the core activities are going to be much the same. They don't change a lot over the years, just controlling weeds, pests, not. Where I do see change is the resource management. So things evolve, things shift. I see them guiding us in different directions there. So that's where we'll need some input on what we're doing as regards to that. The biggest components there are the environmental farm plan. We didn't have anybody doing environmental farm plans, and it was a big void in the county. And then when Matt come on board and we got him trained to do environmental farm plans, they wanted us to do environmental farm plans all over southern Alberta, counties that aren't ours, which we did not do. So that's important. And then promoting some of the funding streams for the province, that's also very important. And we haven't had the tour for last year, it didn't work out. That's on our grant, but we're doing so many other things. I think it's going to go to the videos and things like that we're doing very well. The uptake of those is very good. When we're doing that nutrient management webinar, I mean, 100 and some people. Like a lot of counties are struggling with getting folks to come to anything, but the videos are working very well for us, and we're catching people not only in our county, but we're promoting all over Western Canada, really. So we want to guide the government, like through some of the surveys and stuff. We want to keep doing what we're doing well and shift away from stuff that's not working or do things differently. It's no sense spending a lot of effort on something that's not working. And if something's working great, let's just key in on that and keep going with it. So.
But just getting back on the ag tour, I thought it worked really well the way things were going. Like I think the last one we had was 2019. And there was a lot of uptake on it. We had the buses full, and then we had the college people come in, a couple of buses there too yet, and I think everybody was really enthusiastic about that one. But I guess the cost in the organization is quite up there.
We'll get into it a little deeper, but obviously there's a cost to everything, right? So, and we may do some more tours and stuff with the college, but it'll be at their expense. They'll be hiring the bus and paying for their lunch, but Matt may find them the places to go because he has the contacts. So we're always in contact with both the college and university on what we can do there as well. But as far as folks wanting to attend a tour, last year there were 0 people that signed up to take in the deal that we had worked out at Broxburn. So we'll move into some options a little bit later, and we'll go through it a little bit more on that too. So there are some avenues we can work towards, but with that said, we do have a recommendation that we go back to the level of service, and we move that Agriculture Service Board 2024 level of service be recommended to County Council for approval.
Okay. Anybody want?
I think you guys are doing a great job. I would like to make that motion.
Okay. Any more discussion on it? If not, what are you in favor? That's carried. All right. Then I see that Karen is here, right? And so we'll take a 5-minute break or whatever, and then we'll continue on with the delegation. All right, I think it's,
That was my minute.
our 5 minutes are over. So I'd like to welcome Karen Schmid to our thing. And I think you come out of Calgary, don't you?
I did, yes.
Okay. And do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I work for Alberta beef producers. I'm the lead in beef production and extension. So essentially I manage all of our animal health and welfare files as well as our research component. So we do have a small research budget that we do. And I guess I've been with ABP for almost 12 years, 12 or 13, something like that. And so essentially, I guess why I'm here is I'm pretty heavily involved in emergency response planning, and especially right now, the foot and mouth disease file. So I was asked to just kind of give a bit of a presentation about what we know and what we don't and what the risks are. And I guess with that, I'll just get started.
Yeah. With that, just go ahead again.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So foot and mouth disease, just a bit of background, it's viral. It is highly contagious. You're looking at about a 2 to 14 day incubation period. There's a number of methods where it can transmit, airborne being a major one, so sometimes up to 60 kilometers over land. There's been one recorded instance of up to 300 kilometers over water. That was several decades ago. But what it really requires is it likes a bit cooler temperatures and relative humidity in that kind of 60 to 65% range. And I actually looked up some relative humidities when I was first giving a version of this presentation. And Calgary and Lethbridge actually hit that relative humidity level quite often in the winter months. But the thing that might save Lethbridge is the wind speed. So if the breeze has to be calm and gentle, not gusting. Direct contact, any secretions, milk, feces, urine, respiratory secretions, all of that spreads it. Mechanical transmission, so we're talking about people, equipment, footwear, clothing. It can actually live in our respiratory tract for about 48 to 72 hours. It doesn't cause anything bad in people. It's not the same as hand, foot, and mouth disease that you sometimes hear about. And obviously ingestion. So if there's contaminated feedstuffs, if there's something on the ground that they're licking, that's a number of ways it can spread. And so we're talking here really about cloven-hoofed animals, cattle, pigs, sheep, goats, all of those types of animals, not poultry, not horses, not cats and dogs, okay? Although those animals can carry it around. It can live for 96 hours on a chicken, which was something I didn't know. The main signs you'll see is fever, decreased growth, and milk production. You may see some abortions, but what we're really looking for is some drooling and some foreleg lameness, and that's caused by these lesions or vesicles or blisters that show up. And sorry for the gross pictures, but that's kind of what you might see in a foot and mouth disease scenario with those blisters that have ruptured. You can get heart failure in young calves, so sudden death in really young calves, and you'll see some very specific heart muscle striations in those cases. Mature animals will recover in about 2 weeks, and I say recover in quotes because some actually never go back to their previous level of production. They may never milk again. They get sometimes really sensitive to heat as well and have a hard time thermoregulating in heat. And it is a reportable disease, so this means this is CFIA involvement, Canadian Food Inspection Agency involvement right off the get-go. There's 7 main types, we call those serotypes, but each of those serotypes has several different variations. And so this is why, and I'll get into vaccination a little bit later, but this is why we don't preventatively vaccinate, is because you never know what strain might hit. There's a lot of other diseases that might look a little bit like foot and mouth disease. In swine, the common one is Seneca Valley virus. But these are diseases that we might see. I've just highlighted what some BVD lesions look like, which aren't that dissimilar to the foot and mouth lesions. Some of these diseases are reportable as well, such as vesicular stomatitis or blue tongue, but some of them we have kind of regularly in our cattle populations. This is an official status disease at the World Organization for Animal Health, which means there are some very specific rules, and we'll talk a little bit about those later. And it's a little bit different from some of our other reportable diseases where we have a bit more latitude in how we manage them. The impact in the 2001 outbreak in the UK, we ran about $15 billion Canadian. It lasted for 220 days, involved over 2,000 premises, and 6.4 million head were killed through disease control or the welfare call. There are 1,800 vets deployed, and they ran 36,000 pounds in cleaning and disinfection costs. So it's significant impacts there. In Japan, this was a bit smaller in 2010, about 0.7 billion Canadian dollars. It was much shorter and involved much fewer prevalence, but you see that significant impact in disease control and welfare calls. Again, I talked about it being an official status disease. Our last case in Canada was in 1952, 1953. It involved 44 farms. You can see there the number of animals that were depopulated. In 1952, $53, that was an $89 million impact in compensation for producers for animals ordered destroyed, as well as trade impacts. If we were to experience an outbreak today, a large outbreak, we could run $65 billion pretty easy. And our time to freedom, and this matters, could run anywhere between 16 and 18 months, and this is kind of a best case scenario. We are currently free where vaccination is not practiced, and this is important as well because in areas where vaccination is practiced on a regular basis for control, they have significant trade restrictions that we don't experience. Stamping out is the preferred method, so that's kind of all hands on deck, eradication, we get it, it's gone, hopefully it never comes back. So that, again, that time to regain free status matters with the kind of control method you use. So if you're stamping out, you're looking at a minimum of 3 months. Again, this is after the last animal has been destroyed and surveillance has taken place for at least 2 incubation periods, so that's 28 days. If you're using emergency vaccination to kill, either disposing, so essentially dumping them in a hole, or salvage slaughter, again, that's the 3 months. But right now, under current WOA rules, emergency vaccination to live is 6 months. So you're essentially doubling that time. And again, that would be after the last vaccinated animal was destroyed. So there is a proposal in front of WOA that will go up in May to harmonize those timeframes, but we don't know whether it will pass. So that it really makes a big policy decision on what control methods you use when you're looking at an outbreak. Under WOA, they have a provision now for zoning in emergencies, but all infected premises must be included. And so this is kind of important. So if we're looking at this map of Alberta, say we've got these premises bubbles, right? Say those are 4 infected premises with a buffer zone around them. You create another buffer zone around that, which is called your primary control zone. And then after that, there's another buffer zone, and that's the WOA containment zone. So in theory, this would allow for trade to resume in unaffected areas. But if you ever have an infected premise outside of that WOA containment zone, it disappears, and then the whole country is under quarantine, essentially, right? And the borders are shut. Now, just because WOA says that you can trade again, doesn't necessarily mean other countries will trade with you again, because they have their own specifications, I guess, to say, oh, well, just because WOA says maybe we don't trust that, all of those kind of things. But we do have a bilateral agreement with the United States to recognize zoning. So that's an important component, especially if the disease were to be found in both countries. So if we want to think a little bit about how could it get here, I've tried to kind of rank. Unfortunately, there aren't any really good numbers around the risk probabilities, but I've tried to group them by kind of low, medium, and high. Airborne, right now it's low. We don't have any nearby areas with infections. Animal to animal, again, pretty low because we don't import any live animals from countries that have foot and mouth disease on a regular basis. Importation of genetics, feed, legal importation of meat products, there are controls in place for all of those. I've starred feed, and that's one where right now we're not importing any feed from countries that have African swine fever. So China, India, those types of places. And that's actually probably pretty good for us because those countries that have African swine fever right now generally have endemic FMD that just hangs around there kind of all the time. A facility escape, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It did happen in a very minor outbreak in the UK in 2007. We only have one biosecurity level 4 lab in Canada, and it doesn't work with FMD on a regular basis. Most of that work is done in the UK. So we'll call that low, maybe low star. International travel, temporary foreign workers. If you're following proper biosecurity practices, you know, not wearing the same clothes that you were on an infected farm with, the people carrying it in your lungs is time limited. So, you know, that could be a method of introduction. But the biggest one really is probably illegally imported meat products or byproducts. Bone-in material that contains lymph nodes, so sometimes sausages, organ meat, or when the pH of the meat remains above 6. So FMD is really sensitive to pH changes. It has a pretty specific range it needs to live in. And I think pretty much the bulk of the outbreaks that were studied from the 50s to the late 90s, early 90s, this was the primary method of introduction. So that's one of the things that Border Control Services has been working on. They've increased the number of dogs, and actually the dogs are better at finding illegally imported meat products than they are finding drugs, so that's good for us. And then, of course, there's an unknown risk of agri-terrorism as well, I think, with this disease, because it is such an impact on trade. This is a picture of a map of the UK during that 2001 outbreak. And the red arrows are the movements that occurred after the first detection, but before a stop movement was in place. And the white arrows are the movements that occurred before the first detection happened, about a week before. So you can see with just those movements in a small country like the UK, how big that outbreak got with those 2,000 premises. And one of the issues is with, so they had sheep involvement as well as pork involvement, and there's differences in how FMD works between species. So, for example, pigs are really easily infected orally. So throwing a piece of sausage in, infects a pig really easily. And then they amplify that transmission. They can amplify that transmission about 300 or 3,000 times, somewhere in that range. So they shed a lot of virus. Cattle are more easily infected respiratory, and so that becomes an issue again with that in and out breathing mechanism. And fun fact, sheep and goats don't really show any clinical signs. So you don't really know that they've got it until it's too late.
So that would be gone before somebody detected it, that they had something going on?
Yeah, and they spread it all around. Yeah.
So with BC then, because I mean, that's the other one that we had in 2003, and that was a lot worse. But so how can you compare the two with spreading and everything like that?
It's not comparable at all. So with BSE, it's a feed contamination issue or an ingestion issue, right? BSE doesn't spread animal to animal to animal. Foot and mouth disease does. And so that's where you get a big amplification of the impact, especially if you don't catch it early. And that's where this map comes into play. This data is from 2007. It's actual data from Livestock Inspection Services mapping movements of cattle in Alberta over a 1-week period. And it's a bit terrifying if you look at the difference here to here, right? So just think about those movements and see how they're kind of clustered down here around Lethbridge area. A lot of cattle move into this region, right? So the thing is that if we don't find it for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, we're in a big, big problem. If we find it early, there's a big difference between finding it early and finding it late, or if it's localized, if it's on an island, if it's on PEI, you know, we can manage that fairly simply. If it hits Alberta and we don't find it, we've got a problem. Biosecurity again, right? So these are some examples of how it spreads once it was, the UK is the pie chart. What they called local transmission was actually a combination of things where they couldn't actually narrow it down to one exact route. So local spread was a big one, equipment, people. This other table is from Korea in their case, and the big one there was actually movement of vehicles, the farm owners, and actually the veterinarians and disease prevention teams were spreading it around, which isn't great. But vehicle transmission on tires, so we need to be thinking about those exit and entry points and how we're going to deal with that moving forward. Biosecurity, early detection. If we're getting right into a response, if we have a suspicion of something that looks like FMD, what voluntary measures can we take? Is this something like a voluntary stop movement of animals while we wait for confirmation? I mean, you don't want to scare people unnecessarily, but at the same time, we don't want to be spreading it all the way across the country or across the province. If once we have confirmation, that's when CFIA can come in and actually institute those movement controls. So there's at least a 72-hour time window here that we're looking at between suspicion and confirmation. And once they've got those infected premises, you'll get movement controls put in place, 3 and 10 kilometer. We call them radiuses, but they might be irregularly shaped. They'll be looking at tracing all the movements of animals, people, and things for ideally 28 days prior to that detection event. So that's a significant amount of work. And then we move into control, eradication, and surveillance. So we'll talk a bit more about vaccination later, depopulation and disposal, cleaning and disinfection, restocking and surveillance. And there's multiple different types of surveillance that need to be done under the WOA rules. And then we're looking at recovery, which really revolves around financial and mental health supports for the folks involved. And one of the complications is that those financial supports don't come through CFIA except for animals ordered destroyed, right? So any loss of business continuity, extraneous costs for quarantines, those types of things all have to move through Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. So if we're looking at a farm level response, if we've got an infective premise, they'll be put under quarantine, they'll have enhanced biosecurity measures put in place, and that tracing will begin. After that takes place, we're looking at depopulation and disposal, and that will also include things that can't be cleaned and disinfected. This is where the CFIA compensation is paid, and there are limits in the Animal Health Act around what that compensation looks like. So for cattle, for purebred animals, it's a maximum of $10,000. For commercial animals, it's a maximum of $4,500 that are paid for animals ordered destroyed. Cleaning and disinfection, in theory, the farmer gets a plan provided by CFIA, goes through an approval process, and it's important to note that, again, these costs are not covered by CFIA, so that's another element that we have to think about when those conversations with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Then the premise has to undergo a quarantine or a vacancy period of at least 21 days. If there's been no foot and mouth disease cases in the 10 kilometers in the last 14 days, restocking can occur with a limited number of animals, so we call those sentinel animals. You provide a restocking plan to CFIA, it undergoes a 28-day surveillance, and these animals have to be put on the highest risk kind of areas, so areas where animals congregated a lot, like feeding areas, watering areas. They can't be put off in a small corner far away from everything. And if everything goes well there and they test them again, they do a final exam and test, and then you can actually move to full restocking while the outbreak is still underway, which may or may not be a great plan depending on the course of the outbreak.
But with the restocking, how would you go about that? Because you got to make sure that you don't get them from a spot that also has.
So the restocked animals can't be within those containment zones. They have to come from elsewhere. and they would likely be tested in upon arrival. So we do have a test that differentiates infected animals from vaccinated animals for FMD, so they would have to undergo that before they were brought in. Now, if you're not an infected premise, but you're around an infected premise, or you've had animals that were traced to your premise from an infected premise, or you're a monitored premise, which is really in that 10-kilometer radius, this could be, you could be designated one of these either by a trace, so an animal moved onto your operation from an infected premise, or an animal moved from your operation to an infected premise, so trace in and trace out. Or it could be geographic location. So you're just in that 3-kilometer radius or that 10-kilometer radius. Again, you're going to be looking at some more quarantine procedures, biosecurity, and some increased surveillance on these operations, looking for any animals at all that would have any signs. This is where vaccination really comes into play. So what we call, it's called a suppressive type of vaccine, so it's really designed to reduce the spread. So it doesn't prevent them necessarily from getting the disease, but it prevents the shedding. So the vaccine kicks in at about 4 days after it's given. And so what happens is it drops the shedding of that essentially almost to zero. It's almost undetectable. And so what they would do is kind of look at around those infected premises and say, okay, this is high risk. We're in a very highly densely populated area of animals. We're going to vaccinate in this area to try and stop it from spreading further. These animals would all have to be permanently identified until they are disposed of in some manner. If they are going anywhere, like for salvage slaughter, for example, they would have to be DEVA tested. So this is that test that differentiates naturally infected from vaccinated animals. And once they're DEVA tested, if they're DEVA tested negative, they could potentially move to a slaughter plant for salvage slaughter and try and get some of those, some of that value back out of the carcass. But movement controls remain on that operation until the last animal is disposed of. So again, if you're looking at a vaccination to live, where they live out their natural lives, you're looking at a long, long period of movement controls and a lot of surveillance and a lot of DEVA testing whenever you're trying to move animals out. So if we're thinking about vaccination, you have to make the decision really early, because in small, really small outbreaks, if you vaccinate, it actually prolongs the outbreak. If it's a large outbreak, if it's looking like it's going to be a large outbreak, you want to get it under control as fast as possible. So there's some trade-offs to consider there. You're going to be more likely to vaccinate in an area where there's high density of animals that are susceptible, where the spread is looking like it could be very large, where the outbreak is large, and how long you're taking to depopulate those infected premises. The first thing that has to happen is you have to match the strain, because as I said, there's so many different variations of FMD that you have to match the strain there. And if this is where something like the vaccine bank comes into play. If you have the vaccine bank with the strain that is causing the outbreak and it's a match, you can get finished vaccine in about 14 days. If you don't, and you have to make it from scratch, it's more like 14 weeks.
So what you're saying is, so every time you get a different kind of a strain, so if you would always just vaccinate your animals for that, it would not necessarily help you.
There's very little cross protection between the main strains, and even in some cases those sub-strains. So the vaccine for one won't protect against the other. Yeah.
Same as our flu shots.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So where the vaccine is helpful is it's very effective in large outbreaks to reduce the length and number of cases. So this again is a graph from Japan, and what happened is that they were taking on average, I think 14 or 20 days before they were depopulating infected premises. Ideally, you want to get those infected premises depopulated within 24 or 48 hours. And so all they were getting was this giant buildup of animals queuing for slaughter. And once they started the vaccination is when they started to actually begin to get the outbreak under control. If they had just kept the way they were going, the line just would have kept going straight up, which is obviously not a very good situation. I mentioned the adequate immune response, reduces shedding, clinical signs. It lasts about 6 months. So ideally you want to have everything under control, everything eradicated, the animals depopulated before you have to run them through and give them a booster. I mentioned the DEVA compatible piece, and really what we're doing is we're just buying time. We're just buying ourselves time to get these animals killed. Now, how realistic is this depopulation within 24 or 48 hours? Well, the livestock market interruption strategy did some modeling work, and they looked at different sizes, herd sizes, and how long that could take to depopulate using just conventional methods. So we're talking, captive bolts or rifles. And once you get up to that 500 to 1,000 head on the cow-calf, that's too long right there. We're talking about feedlots, that's not great either, right? So we have to think a little bit creatively about how we get these animals depopped on these infected premises if it does hit a large feedlot. Because the longer those animals are alive, the longer they're spreading the disease and putting it into the environment. So under Animal Health Canada, there is a working group currently. Our focus right now is vaccination strategy, given the large investment from the federal government and the provinces around vaccine bank development for Canada. We're focused on vaccine strategy, but we have CFIA, we've got provincial governments, we've got national industry organizations. I'm actually provincial industry organization, but I'm the only one right now. And that's because Alberta has the most to lose from an FMD outbreak. So CFIA is currently working on updating their hazard-specific plan around FMD. This is how they manage their internal operations to include some vaccination component, and they're also developing what they're calling the Candice model. So this is actually based on an Australian model. What it does is it models disease spread, essentially. So you can put in all sorts of different parameters and see how that affects how the disease and the outbreak evolves over time. So we're working on these farm-level vaccination protocols. At the end of the day, what we want is something I can hand to a producer and say, follow these steps. This is what you need to do. We also are going to be talking about biosecurity, depopulation, and disposal. There's a big provincial angle, especially in disposal, because all of the provincial environmental regulations around disposal are very different. So in some instances, landfilling works, in some instances it doesn't. Cleaning and disinfection. Think about the volume of manure in a feedlot, 25,000 head feedlot. What do we actually need to do with that manure to make sure that it's not being a vector or a reservoir for disease? And again, that business continuity piece is going to be huge. I would argue that we don't actually have any programs that work well for this type of event. Agri-recovery is not made for something like this.
Would composting,
Yeah, so you can compost manure, but again, that's a lot of space, right? So composting does work. The issue being is that you don't necessarily want to properly compost it because you don't want to turn it. You want to sit it. So I've been in a couple of meetings now, and I think I have one Friday with USDA around what some of these big issues that we're wrestling with on both sides of the border, and manure management is one. Originally, CFIA was like, well, we could just bury it, right? Well, think of the size of that hole. Can we build a semi-permanent or a permanent structure that just holds it? It sits there for a couple of years until everything's gone, and then, or the compost. And the issue with the compost piles is, again, you don't want to turn it, but you have to cover it so it gets that heating. So one of the other things we talked about was, could we cover just the pen floors with like black plastic so it heats up, and how long would you need to have that covered for? And all of those types of things are things that are being discussed at the moment. Cleaning and disinfection of equipment, the pens, how does that all work? And we're moving towards exercises, tabletop in real time. I'm actually participating in a cross-border foot and mouth disease exercise in Whistler as part of the Pacific Northwest Economic Region Conference in July. So that'll be a very interesting experience for us as we try and test out some of these plans. But you know, even though we're focused on the vaccination protocols right now, what we are running into is all of these things end up being interconnected, right? So the vaccination strategy you use, whether it's to kill to dispose, kill to slaughter, vaccinate to live, you know, all of those things are interconnected with biosecurity and the depopulation and the cleaning and disinfection. So it's hard to stay in your lane, but if you try to look at it all at once, it's too big. You have to break it off into chunks. So the CFIA is the regulatory authority. They have the ultimate say, but they'll need support, and they've acknowledged this. They don't have the manpower to manage something like this, especially if there's already some other disease going on like high path AI or African swine fever or. So this is, I think, where there's an opportunity for the service boards, right? Because even in your act, you have the authority, right, to assist in the control of animal disease. There's passive surveillance when you're talking to folks and they say, oh, well, I have all these lame cattle. Well, please call your vet. Tell them to call their vet, right? Knowledge and communication, I think, as we start developing more of these producer-facing plans, and we'll need an outlet to help spread the word so that there's enough awareness out in the country about this stuff, as well as maybe some capacity. If we're thinking about things like movement permits, we're thinking about things like vaccination teams, depopulation teams. Some feedlots that we've spoken to said, no, we would do this way. We don't want anyone else messing with our business. Other cow-calf operations or even smaller feedlots are like, we don't want any part of this. We don't want to be the ones putting the bullets in, right? And inspector powers, under our Alberta Animal Health Act, you don't necessarily have to be a veterinarian. And so these other inspectors could do things like help monitor the vaccination, reconciling those records, how many doses were given to how many animals, right? Because we're going to need, their CFIA is going to need help. The province is going to need help. We don't have enough people. The UK deployed 1,800 vets. We don't have enough people. But there's also other applicability, right? So I think, you know, these are a list of provincially reportable diseases. I don't need to go through them, but I think the underlying message is that we have a huge resource in the fieldmen that other provinces don't necessarily have. And if we can engage with you folks throughout the process, I think that'll really help. More provincially notifiable diseases, there's lots of them. I didn't break them out into just beef. And then there are some resources already available. And so as part of the working group, right, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're looking at things, we're looking at the plans in Australia, we're looking at the plans in the US, and seeing what we need to adapt to our own regulatory and production environments. And then there's just some things about mental health that I think cannot be understated. Having gone through the tuberculosis outbreak in 2016 and being quite heavily involved, and just the impact that had, this is bigger. The economic impact is bigger. The impact on the wider industry is bigger, especially at the initial outset before we can get the zoning in place. It'll be Canada-wide until we can get that zoning in place. So that's what I've got for you. Any questions? Very uplifting topic, I know. Yeah.
I got a question. The DIVA testing, does that come to a cost is it a cost to the producer, or is the
No, the
CFEP
testing
cover
will
that?
likely, because there's 3 types of surveillance, right? So the first type is looking for infected animals. The second type is making sure no more infected animals are cropping up in zones. And then that third one is looking at the effectiveness of the vaccination and that DEVA testing. But the CFIA will cover those diagnostic costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can the strain change too? Like when
So-
you're vaccinating, can it mutate or?
There can be some mutations in topotypes. So like the main serotypes don't change that much, but underneath that's where you get more mutations happening. In the course of an outbreak, I'm actually not aware of any where there was a significant enough mutation to render the vaccine ineffective. But you will see minor changes. Of course, the longer the outbreak goes on and the more it spreads, the more opportunity there is for mutation to occur.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously our biggest point is infected tissue being imported. Like back in 2014 when BD hit North America, that was a source of infected blood meal from China.
From feed, yeah.
When, you mentioned that we're not importing from current countries.
But-
What regulations are we doing? Because it is an active, we're using, you can use cross-species tissue or blood and meat meals within species, right? So.
Yeah.
we're doing to kinda-
So if any of that material is heat treated, when it's mixed in, it'll be okay. What our concern is right now with feed is some of the practices that are used in primarily India and China. So in India and China, you could find pictures of this. It's wild, and I had no idea about this before I started digging into this stuff. But they'll spread the grain out all over the road to dry it. And so anything can just like wander through there, right? And then they pick it all back up again and send it. And there has been some work showing that there can be significant survival of FMD viruses on feed. So the risk primarily would be feed coming from a country that has foot and mouth disease, where animals that could potentially be infected would have access to that feed that is then imported. And so there are some, like, we don't import fresh forage or anything like that from any countries that have FMD. Grain can sometimes be a bit of a different story. So that's one of the things that we've raised with CFIA. They don't seem to think that it's that big of a risk, but it's something that we would like them to investigate a little bit further.
So like in breeding, what would be the time that it would stay as an active virus? Because typically you'd be, I would think organic or something, or the grains that you imported from another country that would be the highest risk.
Yeah, and so there's a whole list of different time frames under different conditions. It's so I don't have the number for grain off the top of my head. But what I can tell you is that it's more likely to survive where there's extra organic matter. So manure, bedding piles, those types of things are worse than actual feedstuffs that we'd be feeding. But it does vary with time, temperature, all of those things. I can send the list over to Gary if you're interested.
The other than, are they putting more resources, so like you said, the drug dogs are doing a better job at screening. Are they putting enough resources at screening at borders and stuff? Because you think of our trade agreements that we make in country of origin, and a lot of pushback is against country of origin labeling of, say, sausages or whatever. So it could easily have products leave India, go through Europe and come here, or whatever, right? Like those types of screenings would be, I think, top of priority versus.
Yeah, there were 950 some seizures of like food products that weren't supposed to be coming into Canada at the border last year. I don't know how effective that is at catching everything. I think the border control could certainly be stepped up. I know, like, I was just in the States, and you know, check the box that says farm and no one seems to care. But again, they put more emphasis on those countries where they know there's risk, right? So Canada, US, not so much. If I was coming from a place with active outbreaks, they do put more emphasis on that, or countries where the population maybe doesn't have the language facility to understand, oh no, I can't bring this sausage into Canada, right? So they do put a bit more focus there, but I certainly think that could be stepped up. It was a German worker, yeah. Yeah.
Because if you have, like, once in a while, you know, you watch Border Control.
Yeah.
And it's actually really, really interesting. I kind of like that show, what people bring in. But if they would have put as much emphasis on these kind of things as they do on drugs, I think we'd be way ahead of the
Or even the aerosols and gels.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is certainly a conversation that continues to happen, knowing that that's likely our highest risk level.
I just think back to my university days and we did a small research project in Venezuela when we went back and brought some newer samples and stuff from the water buffalo. We didn't declare it coming through the US or the USBCs, but when it came to Canada, we declared it to the CFIA. And I think training there has got to be taught, because I think back to then, we declared what we had and they kind of just did a whole.
What?
And so we gave them the steps of what we wanted to be done instead of them coming to us, but you know.
Yeah. I've had to ask for boot disinfectant before, right?
Well,
Like,
we had newer samples.
yeah.
And so we said, bag it, ship it to them, if they have it agreed, and forward it on to this university, or what they were great. I just,
Oh, no, I agree. I agree. It is something that we will continue to be pressing for.
And an example was, like in the BAC time too, that there was a veterinarian coming from the UK, and he was from Calgary then, and so we and it was going on for a little while. It was declared that we had a big thing going on here, and so he came to the airport, and they didn't have no mats, they didn't have anything like that, no disinfection, no anything like that. So how are you doing? They said when he came in. He says, not very good. And then he went after, and he got the right person to go there. I think within an hour, they had their disinfection mats and everything like that in place. Because, I mean, that's how critical
At that
is.
time, yeah, and we didn't know how BSE spread at that time,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
yeah.
So, any more questions? Well, there was great information and a lot of informative stuff here, and I want to really thank you for coming out here and presenting to us. And if there's nothing else, I should probably ask for a motion here to accept this as information. Eric?
So moved.
Okay. Any more discussion? Any more questions?
Well,
Not-
thank you very much for having me. And yeah, if there's any questions, you can feel free to reach out. Gary has my email. Happy to continue the conversation. One thing I'd like to make sure we do once we have some more of these protocols and plans in place is really to fan them out to folks like the ASBs to get some feedback and figure out how we can do that, and definitely involve them in exercises as they come forward.
Okay, well, again, thank you very much. And can I have a show of hands, people who are in favor of accepting them? Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
carried. Okay, have a good trip back.
Thank you very much.
Karen?
So I took in Karen's presentation at some training we had in December, and in her presentation, she kept emphasizing, could you imagine if this happened in feedlot country in southern Alberta? So that was my cue to invite Karen to come talk to us. So, and we have identified areas where the soil is right to have those sites, but it would be massive. You can see how long the depopulation would take. We'd be in over our heads. It would not be a good day, but we're going to have Heath come up, and we do have a plan, right, Heath?
Yeah. So, because just another example, my grandpa told a story there, foot and mouth, and that was before the Second World War, and he had, so what they did was they soaked the hay and everything like that, so that they can keep the animals eating, and stuff like that, and they kind of nursed them with their feet.
Sorry, Ken.
But, because, I mean, there was nothing going on there at that time, but I mean, still, they managed to keep their animals alive, and I thought that was, you know, when you hear that, think, what did these people have to go through? I know they didn't have as many animals at the time each, but, yeah. Good, so now we're gonna move on to Heath Wright, and
Yes.
he's gonna.
Good morning, everyone.
Have a presentation on the emergency
So-
plan, the livestock emergency plan.
What to do in the event of?
Yes,
And I would say Keith, or Heath. I mean,
Okay.
Go ahead.
sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to first, I guess, introduce myself because I think there's 3 individuals in the room that haven't met. So my name's Heath Wright. I'm the Regional Emergency Manager of Emergency Services for the region. And lately, just recently, I've been appointed as Director of Emergency Management. So this is in my wheelhouse, which is the Livestock Emergency Response Plan. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that there was a plan. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm just going to highlight a few things on what we're working on right now. Presently, as a region, we're actually working on a regional emergency management plan, which obviously this plan would incorporate into that. So there might be some amendments in the future, there might be some changes, but not really at the bulk of this plan actually is mainly consists of specific livestock incident responses for specific hazards. And when I say that, I'll just give you some examples. So yesterday we had a little bit, I wouldn't say a scare, but we had a few fires going on. So this is going to be in our wheelhouse for a little bit, with the drought conditions, as well as the windy conditions and the dry conditions. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But obviously the hazards are fire, thunderstorm, floods, tornadoes, winter storm, drought, which we are in, and motor vehicle accidents, building collapse, hazardous materials, explosion, and neglect cases. So those are the 11 that we've specified in this livestock emergency response plan. I guess what we can say is, first and foremost, we all realize that life safety is our first priority, but in realistic terms, when it comes to livestock owners, we realize that that priority might be in a little bit different perspective, and that's about their livelihood and about their livestock. So what we're doing as not only myself, but I'm working with AEMA, with Brad up in Edmonton, as well as Gary and his team. We're doing different things to make sure that if they are going to shelter in place, we're not going to try to hesitate and say, no, you can't. We're going to try to build them up with the biggest protection opportunities possible. So it's not realistic to say that to a livestock owner that they can't stay with their livestock when it is their livelihood. So we wouldn't recommend that they stay, but we will give them as many tools as we possibly can. The other thing is, I think one of the initiatives that we're working on too with this livestock emergency plan is prevention is my background, and I think working with livestock owners and working with the public and working with the government to make sure that we have something in place as far as working with Matt and the EFP initiatives. I think that's, I know a lot of people are wondering what the heck is an emergency services guy going to be doing at EFP, but water access, do we have access to water? Is there a water supply on site? Is it valid? Is it actually a resourceful water supply? So we're actually going out to farms and speaking to these people and saying, first of all, we might not have access. Second of all, can we actually draft that water out of that water supply? Emergency access, do we have actually access? Is it possible? So those are simple things that we can do with our community that I believe that is crucial that we get in front of before something happens. We also have things like Fire Smart Canada initiatives, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but Fire Smart Canada is actually initiatives that we call it hardening up people's properties. So instead of having cedar shakes on infrastructure, we actually have tar shingles or metal roof or ceramic tiles. The other thing too is vegetation. A lot of things, when I was at Ag Expo and I was talking to some individuals, they didn't realize that there was actually fire-smart vegetation. And we have handouts, there's lots of websites, and there's lots of opportunity to work with the community on that as well. Ideally, you know, we're dealing with different things. Like, so if you're looking at feedlots, feedlots are going to take care of themselves. They have millions and millions of dollars as far as livestock, but as far as they will shelter in place, and they will put their cultivated land. They'll make their fire breaks, and they'll have their sprinklers in place. Your 300 head livestock farmers, that's one of the simplicities that we can give to those. Is what's more beneficial, to actually get the discs out and plow around your facility and get a fire break and have those maybe sprinklers in place? Absolutely. That's probably the basic emergency plan that I will probably say till I'm dead and gone. So I would say just something simple. Let's just keep it simple. You have to weigh your odds. What's worse? Do we lose livestock or do we lose land? But those are the decisions that I don't think we should be making under emergency situations. So that's why that we're trying to get out in the public and educate, not only through social media, because everybody almost becomes numb after a while, but like Matt said, we're getting out to the public, and we're actually making some human contact. So I'm not going to get into the details of the actual plan, you guys. Like I said, the response plan is there. We have it. It's going to incorporate into our regional emergency management plan. That's still in the works. That will be coming, but it won't change much. So with that, I know it's quick and short and sweet, but I don't think I need to dwell on anything else. I think you guys get the picture. We're using the KISS theory, and it's worked so far in my career.
Are there any questions for Heath? No, you here? Yes, John.
For those members of the ASB that may want to take a look at that, is that a document that is shareable?
Yes.
Or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, definitely.
So they can
Yep.
reach out to Candace if they want to see a copy of that?
100%, yes.
Okay. If there's no more questions, Heath, thank you very much for your presentation. And I don't think we need a motion for this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely keep it short.
Hey, then we'll move on to our, does anybody need a break, or are we good? Okay, then we'll move on to correspondence. And with that, we start with the Alberta Livestock Assistance Program. And Gary, you wanna take correspondence here?
We will. There's been quite a bit of correspondence that come in since the last meeting, and mainly it's the assistance program. A lot of counties weren't included in the program, and they wrote letters, and then they got responses, and then they changed who was could be apply for the program, and then that made them write some more letters. So, and then they got some more responses. But the key here is some counties, what they've found is that situation can vary from one side of their county to the other side as far as drought, and that could happen here too. So I think they had some valid reasons there. Could you imagine on the north side of the Little Bow, that's often where we're dry, and then, you know, south and irrigated areas much different. So that could happen to us too. So I would support these letters. And then in one of the letters they wrote that, you know, yes, they did get rain, but the rain didn't come until middle of July or late July or into August. They got a lot of rain. But as Derek knows, he's got some cattle, it's when you have the native pasture that by the time middle of July comes and it's been a drought, that native pasture doesn't recover for that year. So they're still out, right? So many letters on this one, and we'll move down. And you can see the affected areas, mostly in the central part of the province. quite a few of them, as you can see. Now we'll move on to correspondence we got from the county warner.
Just a minute on this one here. With the livestock assistance program, a lot of them have, well, you gotta put that out there to be able to get some, maybe get some money that, out of it for the damage that you have. Is there any applications that went out for that, or not that you know
That's
of?
all through, like, it runs basically through AFSC, does all
Okay,
that.
yeah.
So, like we did, like I did personally, we went and applied for it and we got our recovery. They gave us, it was up to $150 a head.
Okay.
So, I know a few people that applied for it. I think the biggest thing with that for the counties like up north and that, I got a friend up in like Lac St. Anne County. Their average rainfall is like 33 inches of rain. They got 12 inches. They're mad because they didn't get, they weren't in the recovery zone, but I think they went off of like just your average rainfall, right? Where we only got 4 inches.
Yeah.
So they still got lots up there. I think that's why a lot of them were excluded, but I'm not 100% sure how the government went about that.
Okay. John?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. When I was reading through this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't miss anything, these were just copies that were sent to agriculture livestock assistance program that we were copied on. I didn't see anything in here where they were looking for a letter of support or anything.
No, we're just supplying these as information.
Okay.
And Derek makes a good point. Up north where they're used to more rain and they didn't get it, it also affects the feed. So there's a feed shortage, and that producer that got a third of the amount of rain that he's used to is short of hay. Now he's got to buy it, and that price of feed is up like it's never been before, right? So it makes it difficult for everyone. So. And what was the funding, $150 per head for feed?
Yeah, it was up to $150 a head.
And that can make a big difference over the winter, right?
Oh, yeah.
So.
Okay.
Moving down, this is correspondence from the County of Warner, and it's regarding the STARS charity auction we had at the provincial conference. We got the numbers in last week, and it actually come in at just over $20,000, and we presented a check to STARS at one of our meetings we had recently. And then we got a thank you letter back, and it was actually a thank you letter from a person that had flown on STARS, and he said that it's people like you that saved my life. It was a guy that lived in the county of Newell and had been kicked by a horse, and he was very lucky that STARS transported him and he was able to survive. And thanks to those that attended the conference and bid on some of these, and some were the successful bidders, for thanks for that. So there was a little problem with the bills going out, but we hope we got that corrected.
Yeah, we did.
John, he purchased a barbecue, so we expect an invitation shortly for barbecue, I guess.
Summer barbecues on John.
John didn't get a bill for the barbecue until like 4 days ago.
Well, even better.
Well, did you,
No.
100% finance.
No, that all went to STARS, and that was awesome.
so did you pay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving on, we got a letter here from Northern Sunrise County. They got a couple in here. This one is that they need to follow the science on allowing chemicals and use of chemicals, and not just public perception. So I would think that is the way they're doing things, but they're trying to keep them honest maybe on this a little bit. And this one we're going to be dealing with later. It is the proposed changes to the weed control legislation. Derek can maybe speak to this one a bit on the process that's been happening over the last 6 months.
So what they're trying to do there is, like, there's a lot of weeds, like prohibited noxious and noxious weeds, that they're trying to deregulate. The government met with some Ag Service Board members. They have a whole system where they put all these weeds in, and through their system, they want to either deregulate some of this or try and, weeds that aren't regulated, they want to regulate now. So there's been a whole big thing going on about it, because there's a lot of, there's some like prohibited noxious weeds that they want to take right off the act. But yeah, there's a lot of counties and everybody's upset about it, so they're all trying to get as much information together, and that's why these guys are sending letters in, because, you know, some of the weeds they think don't need to be on it, and some of it they do, and so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, there's a wide variance between weeds that are happening in northern Alberta and southern Alberta. And the changes don't mean a whole lot to our county. I've reviewed them all. The biggest one is that they would be downgrading spotted and diffuse knapweed, which we have in the county. So when they're at the highest regulatory, that's when you want to keep them out. We already have them, so they're going to downgrade them. We can still tell producers that, hey, you got to try to keep care of this one if you can, but we don't have to force them to. So in my opinion, that's a good move. Not a lot of the weeds on there are found in Lethbridge County. You know, there's different weeds that are found in the foothills, some of the hawk weeds and stuff. Those counties are all upset that they're downgrading them, or there's some that are being upgraded as well, so.
Okay, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on that. I mean, I think that really highlights the diversity of the province in the realization that, you know, unfortunately, one solution does not necessarily fit all. You know, it's there has to be some regional approaches to this, because, you know, the challenges that we have here are not necessarily the same in terms of noxious weeds as northern Alberta or in the foothills.
And we talked about that too, but even as a region, it's hard too, because like us and like Cypress have a whole different problem that like ranch lands and the MD or Willow Creek have too, right? So it's so much diverse just even with a region as well, let alone the whole province.
And for this review, they brought in some industry, and there's different people that are sitting at the table. Whereas Ag Service Boards, we're the ones that are going to have to enforce that. So we think we got the biggest seat at the table. Our voice should be heard, because it's pretty easy to say, do this, do that, when you're not going to be knocking on their door telling them to do something, right? So lots of counties are up in arms over these changes, so it might just drag the process on a little bit longer. But we'll do the survey after this meeting is over, and it won't mean a lot to you, because there's a lot of weeds on there, but it may educate you a little bit on what weeds that we're dealing with. So we'll go through that. It shouldn't take too long. And they've sent that out to Ag Service Boards and members and everybody. Once in a while, you'll get that survey, and it won't mean much to you. If you have the knowledge, fill it out. If not, we'll do it together at the next ASB meeting if we can.
Yeah, because if you've got some of these noxious weeds, and I mean, if you just about got them eliminated, and then you take your eyes off of it, I mean, it's really important to keep that under control, because I mean, before you know it, it's going to be there again. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the correspondence that we got, and we'll move on to some insect surveys we have in the middle here. Derek, he's the one that monitors for birthday armyworm, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
So like basically we got to set up, through the government, we set up traps. So we got 3 trap sites with 2 traps each. So we got to look after 6 traps on canola fields. Numbers were down this year, so there was really nothing to worry about. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, and through these insects that reports that are done in Lethbridge County, there's not a lot of concern besides grasshopper for this year. And was there anything else? I don't think so. Oh, sawfly might be a concern. That's one where the edge of the field, you'll get the sawfly going up the stem of the hollow plants. And then in the fall, you'll see some of those, the first round will blow over usually in southern Alberta. So that's one to keep an eye on for producers in the dryland areas mainly. Up next, we have correspondence from Farm Safety Center. This letter indicates that they're changing their name so that they can provide other services. The main one we deal with is the farm safety, and they go out to schools and they teach all the kids on how to be safe. And very valued program if we can save kids from being injured. They go out to the colonies. I'll scroll down to our list of, I won't put this report in always, but we'll go down to, as you can see in Lethbridge County, we're one of the main areas, right? So they're based out of Raymond. They've gone to a lot of schools. They ask for a certain charge for each student that they train. In our case, years ago, we decided that we're gonna give them $5,000, and they had the money that each county gives over the past years, and we're one of them, we're given the most, so, and we're also, you know, supplying the students that are learning from this. So as you can see, they have a large program to train students on safety right across the province. All right, we got some more letters. Provincial ASB Conference. We'll deal with this one a little bit later, but we'll go through the letters now. 2 letters that liked it, and 1 letter that didn't necessarily enjoy the conference. The feedback that we've been getting verbally from around the province, they really liked that it was in Lethbridge. They really liked that it was in the middle of agriculture country. They really liked the new building. There was a lot to like. Some of the speakers weren't for everyone, and that was just to create a thought process or discussion process, and maybe that's the ones that are negative didn't like that. So what do you guys feel about the conference and how it was?
Anybody want to speak up? Well, personally, I thought it was a tremendous good conference that we had there, and of course, because we hosted, and I think that always makes it a lot better. And we had, I know there was, especially the person out of Saskatchewan, there was some comment against that one. But I mean, it's just the way you look at it. It's not for everybody. Every speaker's not for everybody. It's really hard to, you know, to get everybody to like all the speakers that you have. But we know the difficulty that we have is trying to get some good speakers, because every year this comes up, and it's really hard. And I think that you got to be a little bit more positive of what the agriculture service boards are doing to make this possible.
And this year with the speakers, the intention was to go back to the basics, like what is the soil erosion, what does that mean what is the Weed Control Act, what is the pest, what does that mean to the province and folks on ag service boards. A little bit of a training aspect, because there's been a lot of turnover and we haven't done that for a long time. So that's why the speakers were picked as they were. And each of us will go on a committee. Derek was on
Promotions committee, so we looked after like donations and also the trade show. We were the ones that got all the sponsors for that and got all the equipment moved in and got everybody in there, which was definitely a big chore, that's for sure.
You don't want to discuss that, do you?
So.
And there were some highlights for Lethbridge County. We had a new spray truck built. It wasn't quite finished, but we had it in there. And now there's a lot of counties that are phoning us and they want to know where we got the work done, how much the truck cost. So that some good PR for us. We also had a booth there with a couple of our staff members attending. All that was part of the $25,000 that we give. And when we get into some of the other new business, then we'll give you some of the financial details of that. So.
Question: any feedback on like the shuttling between the hotels and the conference center and stuff? Just thinking of how the one in Grand Prairie was not ideal.
We got a lot of feedback, and it was all very positive.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a short run. And then we didn't. We contracted that service out. So the ones that provided it was Southland Transportation, and they did a tremendous job of getting us to and from. I mean, they added an extra meeting on the Monday, so there was an extra couple routes they had to do. But I mean, busing is not cheap, but I mean, you want people happy, and I think for the most part they all were. So.
And I think the busing, they all came on time, and they were on schedule, and I think that was a big plus, that everybody can count on it. And that was, like Danny's mentioning, in Grand Prairie, that was not quite that way than it was here in January. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think some of the challenge you have when you're dealing with the speakers is that there are a group of people that you will always run into that want to only hear what their message and what they want to hear. And appreciating that some of the speakers there were certainly looking at promoting their agenda, which some people may or may not agree with. The good part about that is if it challenges you to maybe just think a little bit outside of what your normal thought processes are, And whether you agree with it or disagree with it, you know, give them their moment and you know, have some thought on which way you may want to go with it. You may still want to still stay with your agenda and your premise, but there's nothing the matter with listening to an opposing viewpoint.
Thank you for that, and we have this listed under other business, but we might as well just cover it right now. So I think we paid nearly an $800 registration for folks to attend, $795. The county gave $25,000. Derek's group raised a bunch of money for the trade show. The trade show was very well received. People liked seeing that. I mean, not everybody was walking around as much as the vendors would have liked, but it was nice to have and see some of the equipment that the Ag Service Boards are actually using. So with that conference, we are to make a profit of $20,000 to put back to the provincial committee, which we did make that $20,000. We had a $7,000 surplus. So everything is fine. However, if it wasn't for the county's money, it would have been not nearly as good. We would have had to cut things or work from a different angle. So the first night that we had there was very well received. The vendors, I mean, they wanted to have some of their stuff there, but the exhibition doesn't allow. It's just some of the things we had to deal with. I think everybody was happy to be there. I've been to many of those, and that was certainly the best first night. And I think we just, you know, our booth that we had there made people play a few games, and the mingling was, it usually don't go that way. Usually you have people coming and go to get their registration and leaving. We provided some good food, and everybody was very supportive of the county doing what they did there, so they were thankful. But as far as next time, as we move forward, the next 3 years will be in Edmonton at the Delta South. It'll be interesting to see how they can pull it off with the finances. We know that they're not going to have the facility that we had. You're not going to have the same experience with all the folks that come to the trade show. It's going to be hard for them to live up to this one, but they may be able to do it at a more reasonable price, right? So, and the days of where we, you know, in Grand Prairie, we went there, and I think their cost to attend was $450. I don't know how they got there. They must have had some real heavy sponsorship behind the scenes as well from counties. There was another county in the south that gives some money, so.
First of all, congratulate you guys on a tremendous effort in hosting the conference for the first time. And I've only been to one other. This one was definitely better. So it was warmer. Yeah, I mean, the networking was amazing. I think from what I heard from people, I think a slight missed opportunity was to actually get out. And like you said, and you say it often at meetings too, is that a lot of other folks don't really recognize the tremendous difference and that we have here in Southern Alberta. So maybe even like having organized some tours to take folks out and see some of the different things that irrigation allows us to do, and you know, the intensive livestock, all of that sort of stuff. I'm not sure if you guys have done that in the past, but I had a few people from the north that were like excited and hoping that was going to happen, and then it didn't. So I'm like I said, I don't know, but I mean, it's always a great opportunity because there's always those battles between the north and the south, and how do you pay for it, and those challenges will always be there. But I think overall it was a great event, and I was happy to be part of it.
So I think that, thanks for that. But I think that, you know, I had a couple of comments too of people like, couldn't we organize some tours or something like that the day before? But yeah, we had beautiful weather now, but I mean, it could also be minus 30, 35 at that time of the year. And then you organize something and it doesn't pan out at all. And that's the difficulty with trying to organize it in that time of the year. Yeah.
It can be, I mean, but we could have toured folks around and stuff you could strictly see from the bus, right? I mean, that's a good comments by all. They come a long way and they want to see a few things,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't have been bad to include some of that, so. And that's what we have on that item. So now I'd like to invite Bill MacMillan up, and we got a few items he'd like to talk about, so.
Oh yeah, it's other business. Morning.
It's on
First one, we got liquid manure dragline update.
So we spoke to you before about the manure dragline program and us trying to get people with liquid manure using the dragline system because they're more effective and they benefit the county as well as the environment and the farmer themselves. So we did put out an article that actually it won't be out actually till May, right? The information in that.
No, that was in the last newsletter.
In the last-
March, yeah.
Okay, so I did an article just to inform people about what the program is and what they could expect. We did an application form is put together and it's on both online and available on paper. We had one kind of informal applicant, I guess, Derek Van Ree, who was right on top of us the day that we had the public meeting, saying that he wanted to do it, and he sent the information, and he was going across about 5 different other people's land. So I put together a little permission template slip to say, you know, I'd like to have something in writing saying that these guys will allow you to put your hose across their land or along the edge of their land. And unfortunately, that was the last I heard of him.
So he probably got it done.
What's that?
He probably got it done.
Well, he didn't get any help, because it just, like, I sent him that and said, can you get these guys to sign it? And of course, the reason we want to do that is because, and I know anybody can revoke that permission at any time, but at least we said, we did our due diligence. We, made sure that you were able to do what you told us you were going to do. And I don't know, and I've sent Derek a couple of emails reminding him since, and no response, so.
I believe the application process is out for a little bit right now, so we're waiting on some to come in, and it was included in the budget for one crossing, or what we could do for, I think the number was 20,000.
Yeah, I think what the information that was provided says is up to $5,000 either in cash or in kind. So if we have the time and want to go out and just install the pipe, and actually Graham, Public Works Manager, says that if possible he'd rather do it that way. That way he just knows that it's done. But if we get into a trenchless type of a thing, then they're going to have to get a contractor, and we'll just be a minor subsidy. I think Adrian Sinke there spent about $25,000 on his. So if we gave them $5,000, it would help. But
You mean just putting a culvert across the gravel road, for example? That's what you're talking
yeah,
about.
like, so it's just a culvert, Klaus. Like,
Yeah.
we can put those in fairly quickly through our public works crew, project crew, stuff like that. And everybody's on board to do it. But if you have to go to a trenchless, like what Adrian had to do is he had to go way down and back up because there's no road relief there. It's only about a foot between the bottom of the ditch and the top of the road. So to get depth that we want anything underneath our road, you had to go trenchless. And unfortunately, he was in a hurry and didn't have time to wait for our program, so he didn't get any help other than technical help.
And this has been a good process. This has been happening for a long time. Everybody knows that they're out there, but at least it lets the county know what's going on, and we can guide them to do the proper practice instead of stringing it on top of the road in zigzag fashions. I mean, we got to look out for public safety, number one, so this has been really good to bring it up and kind of educate producers on that we're here to help. We're not getting in the way.
Yeah, the recent contract we've had is from Dirk, and I can't remember his last name, but he owns Sunshine Custom Manure Spreading. And he's asked us for several road closures, and we've been saying back to him, like, can we work with your farmer and try to get something better and more permanent? One of the ones that he has is a crossing of a irrigation canal, and SMIRD can be a little sensitive about that, and I can understand why. Our idea there is to try to see if if SM would allow us to mount like a PVC pipe, oversized PVC pipe or something that the hose could be extended through to be able to reach across and catch any leaks, yeah.
But I think
So
the
it's-
cheapest one that we had was that straw bale on the road, right? You can't pass.
Yeah. Well, this is just it, right? And so actually, Drew Crane is working with Dirk today to try to get the road closures that he asked for. It's not like he's gonna do it today, I don't think, but he just wanted, he's a good young fella. He wanted to be prepared and give us a heads up before it happened, so that's working out well, and I think that he will encourage his customers to get it on the program and get better access.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would it be safe to say that this program being at its infancy is the uptake on it is not as good as we'd hope, but it's starting to gain some traction, or is it just not gaining traction at all?
No, I think we'll get traction, John. I think that you're right. It's new and people aren't really totally aware of it, and they're not exactly sure how to access it, which is what the article was about, and why we've got something online now, and anybody that calls will be able to access the information they need.
And we did have a meeting with public input, and it was well attended at Picture Butte. So, I mean, it's out there, and people know, they're becoming aware that it's out there. So hopefully we can find a couple good spots for these and get those done here this summer. So.
I think it's probably a great idea to have all the custom haulers involved, that they inform their clients that this is all possible, because I think that they also have a lot of interest in it.
Well, Dirk was invited to the public meeting, and he did show up. I think of the name of the other provider just west of Nobleford. Eberl?
Yeah, there's I think there's 4 or 5.
Is it 4 of them?
That do bigger ones here.
Environmental?
Yeah. He didn't make it. He was actually in Manitoba at the time. He did call and say, yeah, I can't come. But so we're getting interest from the custom operators, and I think that is probably where we'll get most of our traction.
All right, I think we covered that one.
Logan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does the SMRID know of this program too? Like, are they?
Yeah.
You work hand in hand with
I've
them?
talked to George about it.
Okay. Yeah, because I want to say they have gone under the main canal with directional drilling once.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they don't particularly like it.
No.
This is just a lot cheaper solution if you can get
oh, for sure.
basically a casing
Mhm.
that attaches, because it's not very heavy. It's not like it's gonna affect their bridge.
No.
What they're mostly concerned about is spills,
Yeah, for sure.
so.
Okay, any more questions for Bill here? If not, then we'll move on to the next one.
All right, this one will be covered by Bill as well. Lagoon maintenance and spreading of biosolids. The reason we put this one on is when the lagoons are cleaned out in the city or whatever they've got, my phone starts to ring about, are they allowed to do this? Nobody likes it. Bill's gonna explain about what's allowed, and the county may be doing this in the future as well, so.
Yeah, so Alberta Environment has a program, I guess you'd call it, a regulation, that says, how do you apply biosolids to land? And it's pretty comprehensive. You have to do a complete analysis of your manure. You have to prove that you're applying at the optimum rate, and that would be controlled by either nutrient or some other substance that may be in the manure. Most particularly, usually metals is what limits biosolids application. The operators, like a Lambourne Environmental, have to get permission from landowners to use their land to do the biosolids application. Environment permits, basically reviews and permits all of the applications that are out there. And you could talk about emerging chemicals like PFAS and stuff like that that may or may not be in manure, but, you know, based on today's knowledge, and I guess the message we want to give is based on today's knowledge, it's regulated, it's safe, don't worry. And it's beneficial.
And the county's gonna be doing some lagoon maintenance this year then?
Well, we'll see. We're hoping to, in the fall, desludge the Shaughnessy Lagoon. And it's gonna be this spring, but there's some questions around some of the grants we applied for, whether or not we could do it. So we're holding off to see if we get that money, and hope to get out in the fall or next spring.
Is it gonna be done on the farmland right close by Shaughnessy there, or you don't know that yet?
Well, in fact, when I was talking to Lamborn, who won the contract that we put out last fall, about delaying it, they actually said they were having some trouble with one of the landowners that they had planned on using. They were also quite happy that I asked them to delay, because they had totally forgot they told Tilly they would come and do theirs. And
But
they
I
were
mean,
wondering how they were gonna get to do it.
I think part of the danger is that they can't grow the crops sometimes they want on the land after it's spread. Because I guess for animal feed it's okay, but I guess it's not for human consumption or whatever, the crops that are grown.
That's mostly the spray irrigation, Klaus. Like, if
Okay.
they put it on and incorporate it, it's really no different than any other organic supplement. But when you spray irrigate it, yeah, you have to worry about, you know, contamination of the feed itself. Right?
So when that process is going to start in Shaughnessy, we hope to put out a message over Facebook or social media on that this is gonna be happening, and maybe stop the phones from ringing as much, because my phone every spring, when they starts to ring, because they think we handle the manure, but it's actually not through us, right?
I'm happy you get the calls.
Yes.
And that's the article that will be in the next one, right? So I did put together a little article for the next newsletter to say, you know, what the general logistics of doing this are, and why it's not dangerous.
Well, thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the next one. We briefly discussed this already. It's the ASB strategic planning possibility. So like I said, we're hoping in the fall meeting that they will have the grant application out, and we can go through it together to get some input. And there's, for both streams of funding that we have, so that'll be upcoming. Hopefully we don't have to make a separate meeting. Next up, we're going to talk about ASB activity or a field day, and I'll invite Matt to come up again. Matt would be the person tasked with you know, if we had a field day for most of it. We attempted last year, didn't work out so well. So we're going to talk about possibilities, and Matt, take it away.
Yeah, so there's essentially there's two possibilities. One is we partner with somebody, do a collaboration, either a new workshop or field day, or partner with someone that already has one that's established. And then the other option would be to pull away from it and just focus on other areas. So that'd be the videos, the newsletters, smaller workshops, things of that nature.
So, you know, we tried in the past. I don't really think we want to go down that avenue again. There's, like a lot of you know, there's just too much in the summer, and trying to organize these events. We're just getting in the way, and we're putting in a lot of effort that didn't go anywhere last year. So there are partnership possibilities. We've talked to organizations like Farming Smarter briefly, and maybe they'd allow us to tag on, but we're not after the key headliner here. If we do get involved with someone, we're just a small portion, and maybe we can have a few of our messages heard. I don't know if Ken could speak on that, or.
Absolutely. In fact, we're kind of blowing up our field school this year into a 2-day event anyway, so I think it fits pretty nicely.
See, that would be the direction I would hope to go in, and then we can be involved, we can have our staff there, we're interacting. I mean, the same thing goes for us. We can't be everywhere, so if we can cut down the amount of days but still get the same interaction with our producers, it works for us. And like I say, we don't want to be the headliner, we just want to be a part of it, right?
No, we're taking the same path. I think there's so much competition for tours, and usually it's private companies that can, you know, bring you in for free and give you great prizes and all that other stuff. So this is meant to be, you know, truly an unbiased learning event, and, you know, there's a trade show, outside trade show and all that as well. So we're kind of getting rid of all of our small tours and just making one big one. So this is the event that we're hoping farmers will go to.
So with the direction of the Ag Service Board, we could move in that way if you see appropriate?
What does everybody think here? Because I mean, I think it's a good idea to combine that, because that would, you know, have people there, and be a lot, save a lot of cost and everything like that too, so.
Okay, we'll move forward with that, working with an organization like Farming Smarter then.
Yeah. Do we need one?
I don't think so. No. Just a couple of other opportunities I'd like to talk about. County Warner's called me, and they plan on doing a tour for irrigation, where it comes from and that impact. So that invite may come across the table, and then we'll look at that as just a totally separate thing, and hopefully the costs aren't too high. But like you say, in the summertime, things get so busy, are we really able to attend or help out? And he wanted us to partner on that, but that's kind of a separate deal. And then students, maybe Matt can talk about, you know, there's the opportunity to.
Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. These tours and trying to drag people out to come to attendance, I think if we're going to be participating in them, we need to be focused, really focused on what our audience is. And these generic invites that you have, half doesn't show up because the food is good, and a half doesn't show up because they feel obligated because they're somehow connected, and you got 3 actuals who are interested. I'm not against them, just, focused on who our target audience is, and make sure that we're staying relevant to them.
I absolutely agree, and that's the way some of them have been in the past. And if we team up with someone like Farming Smarter, they've already got the audience captured. So instead of trying hard to get people in the seats, or just anybody in the seats, he's got agriculture producers in those seats already, and where our message would be heard better, I think.
John?
Thanks. Just a question, sort of a follow-up on that. Is there a requirement of any of the grants that we have to be hosting these? And is there a repercussion if we don't?
We do have it on our grant, but there's a few things that you don't always capture everything that's on there. We're doing more in other areas with the some of the videos that Matt's putting out. We're more than covering it. For instance, we used to have a nutrient management day at the college, where instead of online, it was all at the college, and the expense of hosting that was incredible. It's on our grant, but now we've broken that into 3 separate online meetings that Matt's produced. We're getting way more people. We're doing our job better. So the government, they're going to just say, you guys are doing a good job in other areas, so keep going forward. In some of the areas that we're doing this, I think they're going to change the grant application to actually support what we're doing. We're closest to the producer, so we're the ones that are, you know, I think we understand them better than some of the folks up in Edmonton, so.
Yeah, so we were looking to, with R.I. Baker, and we've done stuff with Iron Springs in the past. We're looking to see if Palliser School District would be interested in having us host, say, a workshop for some of the schools, just to reach out to some of the students. I think it'd be a great opportunity, especially when we're trying to reach out to younger farmers, to the next generation. There's not much opportunity as there was back in the past, it seems like anyways. So we'll either try to bring them out to their schools, or we'll take them out to them when maybe potentially one of the feedlots or stuff like that in nature. So.
And these things are great. I attended the one in Iron Springs, and the uptake by the students was just incredible. And that's an agriculture school. You know, they're in the middle of agriculture in Iron Springs. But once you go into Coaldale or even the city, some of the schools that you could go to, then you're training the city folk, which is important too, to train them on, you know, where their food is coming from, right?
Yeah, because it's really, I think it's really important, those kind of things, because we, you know, the the kids and stuff like that are so far removed from agriculture, they're like 4 or 5 generations already, that they, otherwise way back, it was always a grandpa that had it, or dad had it, or whatever had a farm, and they knew where the food was coming from. Now it comes out of the store. And I think it's really important that they focus on these kind of stuff, yeah.
Well, and they quite like it. Like the R.A. Baker one last year, they loved it.
You focus on a certain class.
We've done, so Iron Springs was a whole school. We had 5 different presentations, and everybody just rotated through each of the presentations. R.A. Baker, it was a grade 6 class, grade 6, 7, and that one we had Grant Collins. We talked about trees. We had Alberta bats that come out, and they loved Alberta bats. And then we also had the blood tribe come out, and they talked about native plant species out there, because they have their own little garden out there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Great, yeah.
And Birds of Prey was at the one in Iron Springs, and they brought a bird into the classroom. But they also wanted to bring a bird into the exhibition, but they chose not to attend because they wouldn't let them bring the birds in there. Which we thought either way, if it worked out well or it didn't work out well, it'd be a good show anyway. But they didn't want it.
Well, we were saying already, maybe we're waiting for that first oil spill. Maybe.
Yeah.
And just moving on, the last thing I'd like to talk about, we've mentioned it in the past where the ASB members and maybe council members, we could load up a bus in the summer and take a tour of what's going on for the ASB. This one, it can be difficult because like we said, there's all these opportunities for the summer. I know the council has other commitments to go on road tours as well, but if we did find time or from your direction, if that's something we wanted to do, we can organize something. It comes at a cost too. One day like that to organize a bus and for everybody involved would be about $3,000. So if that's something you want to do going forward, hopefully we could pick a day where sprayers are spraying and mowing's going on, that sort of thing.
Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the idea, and I think it would add value if you could use it as an advocacy event as well. You know, like if you had the ag minister or some MLAs along, kind of turn it that route where it's an opportunity to both get to know each other and then showcase what's happening in the county.
Yeah, I agree. We could certainly invite folks like that and even people that administer the program for the province. And then, you got them on your side because they know you're doing good work. And, it's a good social day to see what's going on out there. So if you would like to do that, I would suggest either late June or early July.
Eric?
That's a no vote. Sorry, it's, yeah. You know what, the collaboration part, that's great in theory. I think we struggle to get them out in general. So in the event that an ag minister would be interested, yeah, okay, that's more where we could maybe find relevance. But for the rest, we're out and about. We see what's happening as people in the area, and if it's that important, a 10-minute slideshow at our next ASB will encompass the balance.
With this, were you talking about this group, or were you talking about a larger group?
No, there'd be this group and perhaps council and maybe some from administration. And the other opportunity is if you don't want to go this route, and then there's a lot of, like Eric has said, a lot of people have seen this, what's going on. Some that are less experienced or haven't been around long, I mean, it could be picking up those members in my truck and we go for a tour as well. They can show them individually on what's going on out there.
A room in the back of your truck too?
There's room for you, Claus.
John?
Thanks. I agree with Eric on this. I mean, it's kind of, doing something like that's kind of preaching to the choir. We're all aware of it. And if there is somebody that wants to, maybe get a little bit more hands-on, hopping in the truck for an afternoon is probably a much more cost-effective way to do that. If this is something that would be a little bit more geared towards government officials, if we could get an uptake on them, I would see some value in that, because those are people that don't see what their grant dollars are doing face to face.
Yeah, I think everything goes back to how busy folks will be. I mean, it's difficult to get an ag minister to come to a provincial conference, let alone a little tour in Lethbridge County, right? So that might be impractical. We could get somebody, but are we having the same effect? Probably not. So what I'm hearing, perhaps I work with folks that on county or the Ag Service Board that would like to have a tour, and when we're spraying or mowing in their area, take them for a drive and show them all we do. That's the direction I'm hearing. Okay, good. We can move on from that one. The ASB conference review and discussion, we've talked about that. Does anybody have any thoughts after they sat here for a few more minutes? Okay, we're good then. Moving on, members at large. So when you guys signed up, the members at large for the Ag Service Board, it's a 2-year term. So the 2-year term will be coming to an end. In our documents, it says that we have to advertise. So we'll be advertising for members at large again. You can apply again. And then the same process as last time. It will be council who decides on that board. So that comes through our terms of reference as something that we have to do. So be aware of that. And the ones it affects, we will certainly be letting you know when those applications will be put out. It'll be likely this summer sometime, I would say starting in August. Those decisions are made in October after the organizational, or at the organizational meeting for the county on other boards. So be aware it's coming up.
Okay. Then, looks like you came to the end of our, the other business section. And so, anyone need a break? Yeah?
Oh, I was just going to move that we move into closed session.
Okay. Okay, then we're gonna be going back into open session. And can I have a mover for that? Okay. Everybody in favor? Okay. No, I just doubled it up. I do think. Okay, now we're coming back into open session. I think we have one motion that we have to deal with from our.
Yep.
Yep. Are we on, Candace?
Yeah.
Okay. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that a letter be sent to Canadian Pacific, Kansas City under the signature of the Chair of the Agricultural Services Board in regards to their weed control situation.
Okay, any discussion? If not, everybody in favor? That's carried. So I think we've come, yes?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, I would just.
Good
I'm just gonna wait. We'll wait with that one for a minute. Is there anything else that we want to bring
Well,
up?
thank you. I got one more I forgot. So on the schedule of fees, we added a charge for the administration of a weed notice. So we talked about that at our last meeting. So if you're given a weed notice and you don't do anything, the charges are going to go to you cost plus 50% to a maximum of 500. And that's a start so that I'm not helping people take care of their problems. They can take care of them themselves. But I thought that was important we mentioned that. So.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Anybody else got anything for this meeting? If not, now you may, John.
I already put the motion on there, it's on the table. We just need to vote.
Everybody in favor? There we go. That's carried. Well, thank you, everybody.